Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's episode is part 2 of an interview we posted part 1 of last week, so if you haven't watched that one yet, make sure you go back and watch that first. And I hope you enjoy.
You were mentioning like within the Yoruba tribe how the king, he's always broke because he's giving to his people. It very much brought up that kind of it's very much a Jupiterian type of energy. Like we look at Jupiter creates like wealth and abundance, and he expands things. He takes care of. That's why we see Jupiter's the kark of like fatherhood. What does a father do? He's supposed to teach his child. He's supposed to give them what they need, like create abundance for his family, help expand those things and teach that wisdom. So you see that within the polytheistic cultures, that the people in positions of leadership of power, it's not like it is here in like a monotheistic culture where it's a dominating kind of hierarchical power. They're in that position to actually serve, to try to like help, to give back, to have that gabo. Very, very different than what we see in the monotheistic culture. And then the next little point that I want to bring up too is that even if we're looking at the sacrifice of Jesus, we can see very much so like within the Bible even that he didn't want to do that. He was told to, and then even within there, like within the garden, he's like weeping to the point like of praying that he's like sweating blood, which is a physical condition that I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's something that can actually happen to the body when you're under such a state of duress and stress that you can actually, sweat blood. So he was in that much resistance to wanting to do it that, that's right. That is not someone who is bravely going to sacrifice himself because they love everybody. Yeah, it's cowardly on both ends,
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that, again, if anybody's like me, I grew up thinking, Jesus is a brand new narrative. There's nothing like Jesus has ever come before, and here he is selflessly giving himself. And then, you look at it, and like you said, it is a real thing. The capillaries in the forehead burst, and imagine the intense thinking that's going on. That imagine the headache you must have. That it's so intense that the capillaries burst and you sweat blood. That's somebody who's in a tremendous amount of fear, and probably the conflict has got to be so intense, and the guilt and the. This is not somebody.
I am God's son, but I gotta save everybody. So,
I am fully human at the same time, and I really don't want to be killed.
God, for some reason, gave me survival, survival mechanisms in my brain.
And we're supposed to look up to that guy, like he's some sort of example. He's just like the classic codependent, dysfunctional, screwed up, victim of childhood abuse.
Right.
Why do we want to be that guy?
Right. Yeah. Even in the military, like in the Marine Corps, you don't see Marines in combat even, to the point that they're sweating blood or anything. And you think about how intense a combat situation is, like, especially within modern warfare. Like, so, this guy really didn't want to fucking do it. So not only was he cowardly on that end, but it's cowardly on the other side of it, of him being so narcissistic to actually buy into that shit, to believe that, I'm so perfect that my sacrifice will suddenly save all these people, or the belief that those people even needed to be saved. It's a false assumption. Nobody fucking needed to be saved in the first place. We were just fine as we were.
And then you've got the whole thing that the thing doesn't even work because, unless you intellectually assent to it, the sacrifice that and according to the New Testament, he suffered the wrath of Jehovah for every single person's sin, every single person's specific sin, before, all that have come before, that exist and will ever exist. And that's been thrown onto one person. And even after that, it still doesn't work unless you decide to drink the Kool-Aid and become part of the club. And then, imagine Jesus, like, holy crap, you're telling me that 98% of all that pain I went through was for nothing? They didn't even, I mean.
Yeah, the short end of the stick. No.
There's just nothing about it that is valuable. But, my view of Jehovah is that, as you said, I love the word when you brought in projection, because everything is projection. And, whether people like it or not, you're worshiping yourself. You worship Odin, you're worshiping yourself. You're worshiping whatever he represents. You're worshiping Shiva, you're worshiping yourself. Krishna, you're worshiping yourself. Buddha. You worship Jesus, you're worshiping your own codependent victim nature, and you're spiritualizing it. If you worship Jehovah, you're worshiping your narcissistic ego. So it's interesting, the people who are the most religious are also the most judgmental, the most violent, the most hypocritical. I remember growing up as a Christian and watching Jimmy Swaggart. You guys remember Jimmy Swaggart? And he ended up having sex with the prostitute, and he got caught with it. And then, he has the balls to sit there in front of the whole world and go, I have sinned against you. It's just, oh my God. Before that, what's interesting, because I remember before that, he would go up and he would rail against pornography. And he would rail against lust. And that's because he's out there screwing prostitutes.
Yeah.
And he would take the Quran and he would say, like, the Quran is, and he would just tear and destroy any other religion. I'm not a fan of the Quran either, but it was just so hypocritical the way he would destroy everybody else's religion, and then, turn around and it's okay because he confessed and he said, God, please forgive me. And he cried. And man, there's nothing left to say,
Yeah, Christianity very much has this kind of, like, what Logan and I we've referred to as, like, the magic pill, like, concept that you can
just as easy as it is to be saved, it's easy to be forgiven.
Right.
You just say, forgive me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you just do this, and all of a sudden your problems are gone away. Or, so even within our society of, you have this depression, we'll take this pill and it's gone. It's this whole, like, it's the wanting the easy route out. And this is something that's coming up big for me, is the difference in the polytheistic societies and their understanding of Saturnian type of lessons, natural law, versus the monotheistic society, and how they're very much separated from those Saturnian lessons. Where, like, Saturn, there's a reason Saturn, he's the bringer of our karmas. He's that pressure. He's cosmic law. He's natural law. And, like in relationship astrology, we see Saturn, he's not masculine or feminine. He's considered neutral, like Mercury, because he just is. He's just that objective truth of what is, but it's also that pressure. And with monotheistic societies where they really try to not only separate themselves from nature, but by doing so, separate themselves from that pressure that actually teaches us about cosmic law, about natural law, and has these experiences of how we actually interact. It's that pressure of Saturn that forges us and makes us actually have to become something better. Whereas, like, they want that easy route out. They don't want to have to put that long, hard work of Saturn in there. They just want it given to them. They don't want to have to feel that pressure, feel that intensity, or deal with the consequences of their own choices. Oh, I've sinned. Well, now I just get to have my easy get out of jail free card, and I do this. I get dipped in some water, and I'm fucking good to go. It's that, like, that's not how karma works. I mean, you can try that with Saturn all you like, but you're going to have a bad fucking time, like, because he's not going to just let you up without getting the lesson. And that, there's a strong disconnect between societies that are accepting and understand that there is this challenge, there is that pressure, but that's literally what helps us evolve. That's what helps us continue to grow. And without that, you become stagnant and weak and just a pathetic little sheep, like most modern Christians are. They will bend down and lick whatever boot they're told to.
We see that also reflected in Western medicine, where Western medicine is, it's getting better, but it's designed to cover up symptoms. which is the same idea. Here, just take this pain pill, or he'll just take this antidepressant, or he'll just take this, and all it does is it pushes the imbalance further into the tissues. It gives you a little break where you don't feel the effects immediately, but yeah, you end up dying, later of a heart disease or some other really nasty thing as a result of continually suppressing the symptoms. And like you said, Christianity doesn't work because if getting forgiveness then motivates you to then take correct action, great. But if it's just, get out of jail free card, then that illusion that and again, what a great way to control people, because then you can give them conflicting advice. You can give them superficial things to do that go against their own nature, and they'll just take it because, again, like if you question the Bible, they'll say, oh, you can't judge God according to man's standards because a God is so mysterious that we can't use. It even says you can't use your common sense to understand God. You're supposed to use it in your daily life with other people. Any other human being acts like Jehovah, we put them in the electric chair for being a psychopathic murderer. But God can do it, and we can't question him. It just you end up back in the same scenario. And like you said, that sets up an environment where you don't question, you don't analyze, and you don't take responsibility.
Yep. Yeah, Christianity, it's a religion that you have to be a layman to, or not question or not think to really still buy into it. It's just not,
or
when you start
more
actually
for your
critical thinking. Yeah, it's just such a thing. And, another interesting thing to bring out is just the fact that, historically, there's no actual proof Jesus was even a real character. But even if we want to go from the assumption of Christians that he was and everything, as you read through the Bible, you can see so many different little contradictions. You'll say he was, he was all about forgiveness and treating people with love and loving your neighbor and all these other things. But yet you can go through and point at example after example of where that's just not actually the case. And that you can't actually think the Bible is a good thing without having to go through and cherry pick, right? To look at certain things that you want to be and accept, but then totally ignore everything else, where it says it's okay to beat your slave or to treat your wife terribly or whatever, all the other bullshit that we see in there. It really requires people to have this they have to stay in a state of cognitive dissonance. Yep. To where they can accept they have these very contradictory beliefs within their mind because they're reading this book and this is all true and God's all about love, but yet at the same time he wiped out this entire city, or if you do something that offends him, he's going to punish you and generations of children after you that didn't even do anything. He's going to punish them too. You can't actually honestly look at the Bible and reconcile those things.
Mm-hmm. It's there's contradiction between even Jehovah and Jesus. What they're saying, what Jesus is teaching, and what Jehovah is doing are even contradictory to one another.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I like you bringing up the cognitive dissonance because when you understand anybody who is chronically in cognitive dissonance, they act out in really destructive ways in their environment. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what's been happening with the world for the past 2,000 years. You've got, our society, whether they choose to be religious or not, they still live under this cognitive dissonance of being told one thing and doing something else.
I actually have another point on the cognitive dissonance thing too, because, what you said about responsibility. And for me personally, I think that's one of the biggest things that nailed the coffin, so to speak, when it comes to Christianity, and me not even trying to give it the benefit of the doubt as maybe it works for some people or whatever like that, is just because it's so antithetical to true sovereignty and personal responsibility. And, take it back to the Adam story where God is pretty much punishing all of humanity for the actions of one guy. It really comes down to this one thing for me.
this one thing kind of seals the deal as far as the cognitive dissonance. So the Bible also teaches that you can't get to heaven by works alone. Like just going around doing the good deeds isn't enough. You have to, in word, like give your allegiance to God or whatever, give your heart, however they want to word it for you. You have to do that in addition. It's not about you. It's not about you taking right action, which is really what, is the natural byproduct of true spiritual advancement, is you become a more moral person. You learn how to treat other people. And whereas we're the works alone don't count, but yet you have to do the action of converting, which that in itself is an act. But you can do as much good as you want and it doesn't count, but we're being punished for our bad, even if it's not even our own bad doings. We're being punished for some guy named Adam that I've never even met. So it's like you can't have both ways. Either it's the teacher that's punishing the whole class because one kid snuck food in, or something like that. It's bullshit. We all know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again a really great way to control people where there's no clear path on what to do. You can't win, and so no matter what you do, it's bad or good, and so that just keeps you in a constant state of just doing whatever the hell you're told. It's a great way of psychological torture.
Right. It's like, I'm so confused. I don't really know what the right thing is by exercising my own conscience. So I guess I'll just obey and do what everyone else is doing.
And so you just end up doing exactly what you're told without any thinking about it whatsoever. Yeah. I remember what I was going to say, which was that, when I was a Christian, and I remember, just all the time, including myself, you would hear Christians say things like, I just know that I know that I know that Jesus is Lord and that God is a good God. Don't we have a good God? We have a good God. And they talk like that. It sounds like somebody's perseverating like they got a problem, but they all talk like that. And so I just assumed that's what a really religious person does until I left Christianity. I never once to this day have I ever heard a polytheist, especially a polytheist of a tradition that has an unbroken connection into prehistory, never have I heard them perseverate about how good their God is. Krishna, maybe a little bit, but that's almost, they're so close to worshiping Jesus. But other than that, somebody would say, yeah, Shiva's my guy. I really love Shiva. Somebody else says, oh, yeah, I'm really into Rama. And you go, oh, really? Oh, that's cool for you, man. That's great. Shiva doesn't work for me. Yeah, I understand. To each his own. Say that to a Christian. Oh no, Jesus is good. Jesus is he's the best. I know that Jesus is. Please believe it because he's the best. That's obviously somebody who's in some severe cognitive dissonance and somebody who has major serious doubts about their religion. You go to. I can remember being in church and there would be whole sermons on faith. Do you have the faith of a mustard seed? Jesus said, which of course Jesus had the faith of a mustard seed, because look, he turned the water into wine and fishes into loaves. And, and Jesus said, if you have just the tiniest amount of faith, like the size of a mustard seed, the tiniest amount, anybody could do that. If you could do that, you could move mountains, which again, the unstated, follow-up to that is, can you move a mountain? And I'd sit there and I go, I can't move a mountain. Wow, I don't even have the faith of a mustard seed. What a piece of crap am I? And I can remember at the end of the sermon, the guy, after all that, he would say, do you really believe in Jesus? Do you really have faith? And of course, the answer is no. Nobody could sit there and say, yes, I truly have faith like you just described. Nobody can do that. And then after that comes what? The altar call. Come on up. If you want to receive Jesus, then you have to, because you're such a piece of crap. You can't even do the tiniest little thing that Jesus said is the easiest thing to do. And so you better come up and just give yourself to Jesus, you worthless piece of crap. Yeah. God loves you anyway. Oh my God, you're disgusting.
It's like a basic, like the sales pitch where, you want to like highlight the problem, like that they're not aware of. And then, you don't have the faith of a mustard seed. So do you want to come up and accept Jesus now? Because you really need him. But it's interesting that you brought up the whole them trying to say like, oh yeah, I know how much, because like, I grew up like right in the middle, like I'm from like Wichita, Kansas, so like smack dead fucking center in the Bible Belt is terrible. But like, you know, I would hear them say that shit all the time, and it's more like they're trying to convince themselves than they are of you, even, because they just have to keep like repeating that. But I like that you brought up the point that it's a religion that it really is designed to control people, and it has been from the beginning. I know like within the kind of anarchist or natural law community that like Logan and I, our background kind of comes from, that there's a lot of people that have this idea that Jesus was an anarchist, or that it was a religion of freedom and rebels when it first started. And like, I gotta tell you, if you think that, go read a fucking book. That's not how it started at all. It started as a religion of control from the fucking get-go. It was never anything based in sovereignty or free will. Jesus wasn't an anarchist, I'll say that. So people can get, you know, if you got offended, let me know in the comments below. Yeah. But, you know, it's not a religion based on freedom or honoring anyone's sovereignty or anything like that. It's the exact opposite.
Really, really good point. It's a really good point, because it is such an insidious infection.
Yep.
That this is why we need to be able to look at our unconscious. It's so important. This is why ritual, meditation, mantra, qigong, all that, whatever, pick your favorite one. It's really important, because if you do that in concert with the conscious intention to become a critical thinker, you do that so you can look at your own unconscious program. And what I hear in that, which I see everywhere, is that even people who consciously are seeking to break away from what they know is a toxic religion, a toxic mindset, they're still programmed by it, because they can't walk away from trying to find a way to make Jesus fit. Because on an unconscious level, they still believe if they reject Jesus, they're going to go to hell. And a good example is, you know, I had a friend of mine who we were friends, you know, in college, and then we didn't talk for, you know, the last time we talked, he started saying he was going to become a Christian, and I went, oh. And I don't know if I said anything, but it was like, I can't have anything more to do with that guy, because I just couldn't be around it, because I was still deprogramming. So 20 years later, we run into each other, and he says, hey, you know, I was a Christian, and he saes, I'm deprogramming, and it was a total cult and all that. And so, you know, I'm there to, you know, like we're doing now, bag on how fucked up Christianity. And the three, him and me and his girlfriend, were eating dinner, and he and I were going at it. And of course, she didn't know what the hell we were talking about. And he stopped and he said, you know, my girlfriend probably doesn't understand why we're so, you know, passionately against Christianity, because, you know, she's only seen it from the outside. She didn't really get into it as deeply as you and I did. And she goes, yeah, I don't understand what you guys are so upset about. I mean, these are just people that are wanting some kind of connection, and they're looking for some kind of grace. And I said, that's a good point. The question is, why do you need grace? What did you do? There's nothing wrong with being human that you need to be forgiven of something.
Yep.
But that was her first response, that somehow grace was equal to spirituality, that forgiveness meant spirituality.
Yeah.
And it, you know, that now we look at it in context of Odin's, you know, fury towards me, talking about, why the hell is somebody sacrificing himself for your enlightenment? That's the worst thing anybody could do. I would kill that guy if he did that for me. He's a coward. You know, that it's just from the perspective of somebody coming from that, you know, tradition for tens of thousands of years, that is a logical response. For somebody who has been unconsciously programmed and, you know, genetically unconsciously programmed to have to believe in Jehovah and Jesus, even if you say, yes, I'm polytheist, like a lot of people, they go, you know, they practice Hinduism or whatever it is that they do, but they still have to come back and talk about, yeah, Jesus loves everybody. And that's the important part. We'll just take the Jesus loves everybody part. It still means that you're not willing to analyze what you believe. You're not willing to take a look at the fear within that says, I'm afraid. And I can't speak for anybody else, but the most traumatic experience of my life was rejecting Christianity. I'm not doing this because I think it's cool and fun. I mean, it was horrific. I was certain I was going to hell. I knew it. And I was consciously choosing to go to hell because I couldn't tolerate the thought that I was worshiping the actual God that existed, who was going to throw people in hell for no reason. And if that meant I was going to go to hell, I'm going to go to hell. And our ancestors did the same thing. There was one guy, a pagan guy, Anglo-Saxon, and the Catholic guy was trying to convert him and said, if you convert to this and if you get baptized, you'll be saved and be a part of Jesus, blah, 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 and go to heaven. You won't go to hell, you'll go to heaven. And he said, will my ancestors be there? And he goes, no, they didn't accept Jesus. And he goes, well, why the hell would I go someplace where I'd be away from those brave people? Screw that. I'm going to go to hell.
Yeah.
I mean, that people still are unwilling to truly die for the truth.
Yeah. One thing you said that really struck a chord with me about the grace thing, and just taking me back to, I formally rejected Christianity over 12 years ago now, and I'm still purging from the programming and from specifically the shame. That's what really stood out to me in what you were saying, Michael, is how much shame there is about everything, every part of being human.
Yeah.
You're ashamed for being born. You're ashamed for having a body, a naked body and genitals and everything. You have shame for wanting money, for having desires, for, wanting, just to experience like the nice things in life. There's shame around all of that. And you're told that those things are less pious, less pure, less, celestial or whatever. And that's so missing such a big part about why we incarnated as human beings and what all this has to offer for us as an experience.
Yeah, and I like what was said earlier about Jesus was a rebel, and that need to bring him into your thing, whatever that is. If you're an anarchist, and that's how you identify yourself. So you're a rebel, right? And you're a rebel for the right cause, and so therefore we're going to use the default religious person to back us up. Oh yeah, and by the way,
mascot.
Jesus,
right.
But that I've made a lot of videos on my channel about exposing Gnosticism, because that's a typical response from a New Age person who doesn't want to follow the Bible or Jehovah or any of the other stuff, but they still want to hang on to the idea of Jesus. So they say, no, but the original Jesus, he was this Gnostic teacher. And I go, yeah, so what is Gnosticism about? It's about denial of self, that your body is bad, that physicality is bad. Jesus was so pure, he wasn't even physical. He was just this non-physical being. And then you have, instead of Jehovah, you have the demiurge, which is like the devil, which is Jehovah. And he's created this physical world, which is bad. And then you have the heaven, which is good. What a mind fuck. Whereas our ancestors said, yeah, I've got this body and it's got these great things. I can have sex with it. I can do all this fun stuff with it, and I can enjoy life and ride horses and whatever the hell it is. That the idea that being three-dimensional is somehow bad. Instead, it was like, no, this is a cool place. We came to have fun. We incarnated in this really cool, fun thing. It's nothing bad about that. And then there's these other 9 worlds, and they do these other things, and those are cool too. But it's rejection. It's self-hatred. If we say we hate this world and we hate our flesh and we hate the earth, you're saying you hate yourself, because what are you? You're this physical being.
You are it.
And then, it just creates nothing but misery.
I love that you brought that up, because that's been a big lesson with me. Working Venus is my Ishta Devata, so I work with Freya a lot, and that was a huge lesson that I got from her, was just the devotion to just be. That like this place, this body, this is where it happens. This is just, spirituality doesn't happen in the 10th dimension. Not while you're riding a fucking unicorn on a rainbow. Like it's here. Like this is where it happens. And the devotion to being a human being, like that's a beautiful experience. But you both also brought up some points that I think tie very well together in regards to how Christianity, one of the ways it really goes about controlling people. And it's the total difference in the linear progression of life, that you just have this one life, this one little chance, and then you die. And then that is good. You're judged for eternity based off of that. That's a totally different foundational mindset to operate from than what we see within a polytheistic culture where we believe in reincarnation. And the for the purpose of learning, experiencing, and growing, and knowing that you're going to do that over and over again from different perspectives, because there's no fucking way you could ever get it in just one lifetime. Like, you just kind of, like, you have to do it over and over again from different perspectives. Well, that is when you have that kind of a mindset, death is not something you fear. It's not something that you're punished for, any of this. So for them to control society, one of the first things they had to do was really get in this kind of linear, like, they hope you just have this one shot, and if you fuck up, you're tortured for eternity. When people believe that and they operate, it's a trauma-based mindset. It's trauma-based mind control is what it is. It ties back into the concept that Michael, I first came across the concept of the ghost door within the Bagua from you, but as Logan and I have applied it to the Aish Homer, we've done an episode called the unconscious feedback loop, where if we look at the 9 worlds and the different psychological aspects they represent of ourselves, we can see that unconscious realm in Helheim, that opens up that ghost door. But when you start doing that, it actually kind of creates a feedback loop where you're essentially just getting like stuck in this loop, because the unconscious trauma leads into the belief systems. And then that's where those become solidified. That feeds into our ego. Because of our ego, we act on it. It gets into the subconscious. We continue to take actions. It goes into the unconscious. And it's just this feedback loop that cuts us off from actually being able to connect with other people, connect with our ancestors, and connect with the realm of the north, which is unmanifested potential. So we can't change anything. We just get stuck in the same trauma-based loop. And it all goes down to that unconscious programming, that trauma that has been put into our society over and over again. And then people are acting from this, and they're just stuck in this trauma loop that they can't get out of. And it keeps them stuck in dogma.
I don't know if you realize this, but you just explained Kal Sarp Yoga. Have you heard of that?
I have not, no, but this was something that Logan and I, we were looking at the Aish one day, and I was kind of like explaining it to him, and it like dawned on me of like what it really is. And I was like, well, fuck, that's good. Like,
just totally blew my mind. And let me share it with you. And it's perfect because we'll have to look. So do me a favor. I'm going to stop talking so the camera will go back on you. And then I want you to point from the southwest to the northeast for just a second. So go ahead.
Yeah. So this would be Helheim in the southwest, and then this is the northeast. This is Asgard.
Okay. So what you just pointed to was the 2 directions of the nodes of the moon. Southwest is Rahu, and the northeast is Ketu. So Ketu and Rahu are a serpent. And so in somebody's chart, when all of the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu and there's no planets on the other side, then those planets are hemmed in. So it means that it's a really negative thing where they get trapped in obsession or, self denial. And so as we know, these are the karmic nodes. What you just described is, now I know what Kal Sarp Yoga is. Because what you're talking about is you get trapped in the southwest, which has a back door to the northeast, which is what? Ketu. So it goes from Rahu to Ketu. And then you go through half of the cycle. You don't go through the whole cycle. You get trapped in half of the cycle. And so now I totally get it. I mean, I keep hearing about this Kal Sarp Yoga and planets and Rahu and Ketu, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. This is that.
That makes perfect sense too, because it's also Rahu and Ketu are shadow planets, and they're not visible grahas that we see with our eyes. They're the shadow planets, so they always operate on an unconscious or kind of subconscious level. that's there. So, definitely like within our belief systems and the realm of the unconscious, especially with Rahu, and our desires. So yeah, that makes so much sense that how planets being trapped between them would kind of keep them stuck in a certain way, because it's just this dance back and forth between Rahu and Ketu, but they can't escape out of it. So yeah, that's a very interesting point. But yeah, that's something that we've been terming the unconscious feedback loop.
Perfect. This is what I love about syncretism, because here, we've got the Aesh Yomer behind you, which is the 8 gates, which I learned from Taoism. I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew, from having worked with the 8 directions, that they're different. Great. Then I start getting into, runes and all of that, and Aesh Yomer, and I go, hey, let's do this weird thing, and let's put the runes in the 8 doors, and oh, hey, that works really well. Works
really well.
Treating this like this is something that's real. And then you guys are taking that thing that I've, sort of Frankenstein together, and then you come up with this awareness of, look, you get this ghost door, which is a Taoist understanding, and you're using it with the 9 worlds, that is a Norse understanding. And now we bring in Vedic astrology, and we go, that's the missing piece that explains Kalsarp Yoga. And now I think we have a deeper understanding of why Kalsarp Yoga is a big deal, because normally you go, okay, so all the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu, why is that a big deal? Well, it's because, like you're saying, is that the human soul never gets past a certain, limited experience. It goes from the ego to the unconscious, self-flagellation, back up into manifestation in the ego, and then the actions. And it never gets past to the West, which is awareness, which then goes to the Northwest, which is moksha, which goes back to then recreation. And so that'll tell you what that person needs now. I mean, you guys just did something I love. I love that this happened, because this has been my whole goal of all this whole thing. I didn't create any of this. The stuff that I've come together, I didn't create it. I'm just picking up, these guys said this and that works. These guys said this. Let's see what happens. If this is a science and we put this together, this should fit. Oh, fits perfectly. And we'll take this. Nope, that doesn't fit. All right, let's put that out. And, it's not having an agenda of my thing or your thing. It's let's find the thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if we look back, to bring all full circle, if we look back at the Hopi mythology that says that we were all one tribe at one point, and, whatever, our highest awareness said, let's go off into different directions and master the 5 elements or the 4 elements. Then let's come back together and let's put this thing together, and then we can reach, our highest evolution, which is what the Hopi said, is that when the white man comes, because they knew he was coming. So when the white man comes to what we call the New World, if he's wearing a cross within a circle, which is our ancestors before Christianity would wear these Odin, the Eye of Odin, which is a cross within a circle. If they come over with a cross within a circle, they've remembered who they are and that we're brothers and we're going to come together and we're going to create heaven on earth. If he shows up and he's wearing a cross outside of a circle, then he's forgotten who he is, and you better run for the hills, because he's going to bring death and destruction. And it's interesting because the descendants of the Goths, who were, Germanic people who must have used that same symbol, the Spaniards were the first people who showed up, and they showed up wearing the, Catholic cross with no circle. And, now what you guys have just done today is you've taken this, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm not creating any of this. I'm just bringing things together that I see and trying to make it fit. And then you made this connection based on Taoist understanding of the Bagua and the 9 worlds of the Norse tree. And, it's like, this is what this is about. This is my dream. My dream is that we become these adventurers that are able to get our own personal shit out of the way and say, let's put this thing back together. And this is what the Hopis were saying, is that eventually when all of the tribes of the human race come back together and they bring whatever they've learned in their different, things over the past 100,000 years that then, the human race will evolve to the next level. So
Yeah.
you guys just made another contribution to that.
Yeah,
So
well, we appreciate that.
For bringing that to my attention. That's really amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad you appreciate it. No, because it's definitely like a concept, like without your work that you've put out there on the Ghost Store and things, like it was me learning about that kind of, and as well as you teach 9 worlds, that then kind of let me put those pieces together. And that's like you're saying within the Hopi myth, it's about us all kind of going out on our own paths, our own journey, and then coming together to share what we've learned. And it's a beautiful process to see. And this is something that Logan and I kind of, we refer to this concept of like modern paganism, in the sense of like, you see a lot of people who are just getting into paganism, or, especially like within the Alsapru community and things like that, that they'll kind of still bring a lot of these monotheistic filters, and they're like, oh no, the Eddas say this, so it has to be this way. And they're kind of stuck in the way things were in the past.
It's fundamentalist.
Yeah, we operate more from the perspective of like, it's great to learn the unbroken traditions that go all the way back. Those are wonderful to learn to, but you don't have to stay stuck there. Like it's about evolving. Like it's taking like our ancestors didn't have access to the technology that we have today, and if they did, they would have been using it, because especially the Germanic people were very practical people.
Yeah.
Like if it works, you incorporate it into your life and you start using it because it improves your life. Well, we have very unique opportunities where we can connect with people and from other traditions and other cultures in an instant. Like on the other side of the world, we don't have to get in a long ship and travel all the way there. We have so many wonderful. So it's about tapping into that beauty and that wisdom of the past, as well as developing new understandings to continue to take that forward. So that, I really love being able to take different concepts and unite them in a way that works in a new understanding.
Yeah. And, we're all, there's no static. We can take a snapshot and we can look at evolution in a snapshot, and which is what we do when we look at religion, which is wonderful. I do it. I love doing it. You guys know, I love the past. But if we're realistic about it, there's no such thing as a snapshot. Everything is an evolution of something else, and everything is a result of a mixture of things going forward. Mm-hmm. And to not understand that is, people have to come at it from whatever they have to come at it as, and I'm with you. You've heard me go on about the limitations of, neo anything.
Yeah.
But I agree. They're taking that Christian monotheist fundamentalist attitude, and even though they're trying to get away from it, because some of the people who are the most vocal against Christianity will be neo-pagans and neo-heathens, but at the same time, they're taking that approach to Scripture and using it with, like you said, the Eddas. And I think one person even created like a heathen Bible. Like they tried to put together the myths in an order, the irony. It's not even hypocrisy, because it's just irony. That they can't see that. Do you realize you're just doing the Christian thing with the Norse mythology? You don't see that yet?
Yeah, which is what the Christians took with like all our mythologies anyway, and then they kind of put it all together in an amalgamation of something they could actually use to get people to convert. But no, it's that whole, like what we were talking about earlier, where like with Gnosticism or people like, like within the freedom or the anarchist community, they really kind of want to keep putting putting Jesus on this pedestal. And it's like I said, it goes to that trauma-based like mind control of like where they want to deny, like their soul, their intellect sees that it doesn't make sense, and they want to reject that. But there's still that trauma-based mind control, that epigenetic memory, because it's been forced by the sword for thousands of years of like, oh, you can't commit blasphemy. Like you can't say anything bad about Jesus. And so they try to keep it. It's like they try to keep one foot in each pond. Right. Yeah, and they can't decide which one to actually get in.
Right. And so, I liken it to Satan worship. Now, if anybody knows anything about Satanists, real Satanists are not people who sacrifice babies and worship demons and kill. That's not what a Satanist does. A Satanist is somebody who uses the idea of the anti-God to go against this, as they see. They obviously see that Jehovah is a bad guy and he's, hypocritical and evil and all that. But the thing is that you can't have a devil without a God. You can't have a devil without a Jehovah. So it's a reaction. You're still unconsciously worshiping Jehovah like kids do. They rebel against their parents. And lots of times they're trying to get negative attention. What they really want is they want mommy and daddy to love them, and they do that by rebelling. Anybody, I don't have kids, you have kids, you probably know it better than I do, but that's trying to get negative attention.
Yeah.
So it's so like you're saying, they're trying to get Jesus, and they're going to say, no, Jesus is ours. On an unconscious level, they still, like you said, they're coming from a trauma-based thing. They're afraid of mommy and daddy rejecting them. But the way we're going to do that is we're going to paint our face black, and we're going to stand up, and we're going to rebel, and I hate you, mommy, and all that. And it's still part of the same cycle. You haven't left.
Right.
It. It's like yoga. You're bouncing back and forth between the southeast and the north.
Right.
The northeast and the southwest.
Yeah, I like that you brought up Satanism as an example, because I think really the best way to summarize like Satanism is not even so much that they don't actually worship the idea of Satan as a deity or anything. That's more they just will do to kind of trigger Christians out. But it's ritualized atheism. But we can very much see, and Logan and I have spoke about this on the show, how atheism really is kind of a trauma-based knee-jerk reaction of going to the other polarity as a rejection, out of a rejection of monotheism, of, God and religion means this thing, so now I'm not going to believe in any of it, rather than even looking at the other options like paganism and polytheism and other things like that.
Because it still shows that in their mind there's only two choices, which is monotheism. There's either God or there's nothing. If there is a God, there's the one God that we worship. And if that God isn't it, then there's nothing. And so they've been programmed, even if they're not in a religious home, just by being in a Western society, you're programmed as a monotheist, whether you realize it or not. Mm-hmm. And so they've come to the logical conclusion, maybe because their parents were Christians and were abusive. That obviously would explain a lot, but even if not, you look at it and you go, this is ridiculous. This Christian-based society is so destructive. I'm going to reject that. The assumption is that the only choice is there's no God, which really means that you still believe in God. You just don't like him. Yeah. And we didn't see that before monotheism came into existence. We didn't see atheists. You saw people who had different belief systems. You had people who said they're panentheists. I don't know what it is, but it's in everything. Or no, it's this elephant-headed guy. And, they had different beliefs. And then you could believe one thing and this other guy could believe another thing. And you could have a common phrase would be, that's his God. And that's okay. He has his God. It's okay for somebody to say, I don't really believe in one God. I think that there's this Brahman, which is in everything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it was okay. You had all kinds of choices. You could pick whatever you want, but there was this understanding that there was something there. And that seemed kind of universally understood. It's only in modern times where first you have monotheism, which desacralizes everything, which again is Gnosticism as well. It desacralizes the sacred, which is Mother Earth, which is every plant, every rock, every tree, every molecule is filled with sacred energy. And Christianity destroyed that, because if you worship the rocks and the trees, you weren't going to church worshiping the God that's going to control you, like we explained, and get you to do everything that we're telling you to do. So we have to demonize anything that isn't this intellectual idea of God. Therefore, we can control you. That's new. That's brand new. That's only been introduced into the world over, since the idea that Jehovah came into existence. It's 300 BC or whatever it was. Until that time, nobody thought like that. This is a brand new way of thinking, but it's now so ingrained that people can't even let go of their belief in this really fucked up idea of spirituality in exchange for another one, because they still can't walk away from the feeling of there has to be one God. I'm just going to rebel against him and just not believe in him. I'm going to punish him. You know, atheism is a way of punishing this evil God. I'm not going to believe in Santa Claus, therefore he'll go away. Right?
Right.
So
yeah, I like that you brought up that separation from nature and how like the church they very much attack that. You know, a lot of people may not know this, but within the Germanic culture, there was something known as going to sit out or sitting out, where you would go sit in the woods, you would connect with nature, you would be, you know, just observing, worshiping nature, right? Well, that was actually made illegal. There was a law passed against it. I believe it was in the 1500s, if I'm correct. I could be wrong on that, but sometime within the medieval ages, there was a law passed against it too, and it was such a sin that to confess to that, you couldn't even go to a regular priest. You had to go to a bishop. Wow. In order to get, I mean, they very much they literally made it a law that you're not allowed to go out and connect with nature by yourself like that, to go out and sit and meditate. I'll have to look up exactly what that was and what year has passed. But yeah, that was something when I came across it, I was like, man, that just really goes to show you how much they just very directly attack that connection with nature. It's a very disgusting thing.
And then think about how popular it is and intense the desire is for Caucasian Americans and people, I guess Caucasians, you know, Western people all over the world, you know, who are from this tradition. I mean, from ethnically from that tradition, they want to be learn how to do Native American spirit quest. Mm-hmm. And their feeling is, I'm doing this other thing from this other culture. And, you know, I mean, I went to sweat lodges and all of that. That's that same idea. But that's because this is in our DNA. It's only been out of our DNA, according to you, for 500 years. Yeah. It's only been the last 500 years that it's been outlawed, that people can't go into nature and have a spirit quest. You know, they can't sit out. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, you know, it really is. And it just goes to show you how strong the animist or Thomas Sheridan said this once, that he gave a lecture called "Everybody's a Pagan," and I think it's one of his best lectures he's ever given. But when you really come down and you think about it, like every human being, like we can all look out at nature and see the beauty in it. Like we can all observe something and like get a lesson from it. And that's all animism and paganism is. It's just being connected with the world around us. We're all a pagan at heart. It's all the programming and the trauma-based mind control that has gotten in the way of us being able to have that connection. I thought that was such an interesting law that passed, even in regards to like mushrooms is kind of a hobby of mine. And, you know, in the Germanic culture, like ingesting mushrooms and things, it very much was a part of the culture, even if they weren't a psychedelic mushroom. Just mushrooms in general were used for brewing mead and things like that. And in some of the alcohol laws that were passed as a way of trying to control the pagans, they outlawed the use of mushrooms to brew certain alcohols. There was only a certain list of things you could use, like barley and wheat. You know, is very, very limited on what you could actually use to brew and create, you know, beers and alcohol and things like that. So, you know, they really did everything they could. And keep in mind, these were laws that were passed that were enforced by the sword, right? You know, they forced people like into this state of disconnect from nature, of not being able to go out and commune with it, or to even just go sit and to observe and to connect that way. Like this was a religion that is all about control.
Yeah. So that would have been, I would imagine, part of the ceremony if you're working with mushrooms, especially if they're, you know, if they've got some entheogenic properties to them. Mm-hmm. You would go do that out in nature. And so so obviously the fear is that if you have an entheogenic trip out in nature, you're going to connect with some being other than Jesus or Jehovah, which is, you know, against
Might discover yourself. They don't want that. Like, yep. Yeah. Yeah, it really is amazing the lengths they've went through to cut us off from that. A great book that, especially if you're wanting to get into the early history of Christianity and kind of get rid of this totally fairy tale idea that Christianity was anything that was ever worth a shit. A great book to read is The Darkening Age by Catherine Nixie. She does an excellent job going into that book of the early history of Christianity, how they, they destroyed the Library of Alexandria, for example. Like all that knowledge in the Library of Alexandria that was gathered by pagans. Like that was a pagan place where people of all different beliefs, different backgrounds, different interests could go there to study. And people don't know this. It was Christianity that destroyed that library, and like, if you've ever seen the movie Agora, that tells the story of the Greek philosopher Hypatia, an astronomer, brilliant female mind, who with her work of astrology and the understanding of how the movement of the planets and things, she was very focused on that kind of area. They ended up taking her, even though she hadn't done anything, because she was a woman that men looked up to, and she gave advice in the Christian worldview. That was a sinful thing, that's a blasphemous thing. And they took this woman, took her into the temple, flayed her alive with broken pieces of pottery, dismembered her body, threw her torso on the altar, and then took the rest of her body and spread it around the city. This is Christianity. This is how it was brought in. It wasn't done through trying to help people. It was done through burning temples, through burning books, through literally killing and beheading people to get people to convert. It was never a religion of peace and love as it's been presented. Like, that's the gaslighted version. And people who are still believing that, it's because you have Stockholm syndrome. If you're like, the Western people are very much in a state of Stockholm syndrome because of monotheism.
Absolutely. And I think it even goes, as I've said, I think it goes even before. I think Christianity was an afterthought, a much better, it's like the best afterthought. But, I think that slavery, even that is a result of specifically the Germanic people. You don't see it as much in those that the Germanic people conquered. You don't see it in the Celtic world as much, but the people who are of Germanic descent are the people who are most likely to want to associate with something other than their own background, to the point where we don't even know. I mean, I never grew up knowing, what my background was. You go to school, and the first thing you learn about is Western civilization, which is you're basically told that you're a Sumerian. And then from a Sumerian, you became a Greek, and from a Greek, you became a Roman. And then when the Romans became Christians, then all of a sudden we magically popped up somewhere in Northwestern Europe. Of course, nobody says it like that, but that's definitely what you walk away with. So much so that the intelligentsia that I'm watching on YouTube who are talking about history are talking about their ancestors in the third person under this general banner of the barbarians, and the way the barbarians thought and what the barbarians did. And this guy's clearly an Anglo-Saxon, and he doesn't have the ability to go, yeah, my ancestors, when they were here, there's something else. There's something other than us, which I think was, that's why I think Christianity was adopted, was legally adopted, because it was the perfect, this Gnostic, I hate myself and I'm this victim, and I can be saved through this. Let's turn that into something even more powerful and use it as a way to not only control our people, but now we have this really great tool to go in and conquer other people. And we have the Roman, what the Romans used to do is they said, we're the light of civilization. So they started that whole thing of, we're conquering the barbarians with the light of civilization. But now we've got the light of God, and God's going to come in and save your soul. And if you don't want to accept God, you're going to go to hell anyway. We'll just chop your head off. And like you said, I was, and you think about it, this is gaslighting, where you think about, you have this belief that Christianity was this thing that people chose to do and it peacefully happened. Nobody tells you that, but you walk away with this belief. Mm-hmm. And that's where the gaslighting really is, that we have this version of history. Nobody ever really told it to us. Did anybody ever really tell me that? No, but how did I come up with that idea? This is the power of this kind of gaslighting. This is why it's all in the unconscious. It's so important to be critical.
Yeah, it definitely so much unconscious trauma, and especially and it's like in our blood now. Like after 2,000 years, generations and generations, when you bring in the science and understanding of epigenetics, you see how trauma-based mind control gets passed on like genetically, and the expression of that trauma, the result of it, comes out more and more prominently to the point that 2,000 years later, look at our Western society. Look how much Christianity created victims out of everybody. Yeah. It really brought in the whole victimhood mentality, because your fundamental assumption that your worldview is built off of is that you're sinful, and it wasn't anything that you did. You're just a victim of it. Like, you have no power to control it. All you can do is pray and hope this Jesus sacrifice saves you. So it totally puts you into the state of a victimhood mindset. And then we have people that nowadays they like to play the game of what Logan and I like to call the victim Olympics, of, trying to see who can identify with the most minority groups or the most oppressed group to see how many victim gold medals they can get. And whoever has the most and whoever's the most oppressed, now they all of a sudden get this sense of entitlement that, I was this and this and this. And, all my group and my race and my religion, we've all been repressed. And, that's especially like among like the modern, like, political left, you can see that as a group that very much like has bought into that whole, trying to win the victim Olympics kind of mindset, as we like to refer to it.
If you look at that historically, then that shows the genius of it, because when you conquer somebody, and the Romans didn't do this all the time, but they did in some cases, but then when they adopted Christianity, they did it all the time, which was when they went in to conquer somebody, they also destroyed their religion. And they did it as a mandate from God. What a perfect way then, because you've now victimized people. And if you have really come in and destroyed them, massacred them, enslaved them, taken away their language, their culture, how can you help but feel like a victim? And then it's, okay, we got our religion. Here, take our religion. And so then, of course, they're going to identify with Jesus. Of course, they're going to identify with being a victim. And now you have perfected the infection, and they'll pass it on to their kids. And, and I think, again, this is what I think happened to the Germanic people. Because, Celts will go on and on about their tradition and their blah, blah, blah. And other people and everybody, African Americans, Native Americans, understandably, they can talk about, Germanic people never even acknowledge that they had a past. They talk about themselves as the barbarians. Yep. So we're still, among all of them, we are as much dealing with this unconscious victim trauma, to the point where we project it onto the rest of the world. We enslave all the cultures we came in contact with. We destroy them. We do all the things that were done to our ancestors by the Romans. And we never acknowledged, the whole slavery mentality. We never acknowledged it. And it's 2,000 years later, we're still doing it. And that's the sad part. And the ironic part is, where do you see, white supremacy the strongest? Within Germanic cultures. What does that tell you? It tells you that that's their projection, that they see themselves as less than human. They see themselves as slaves. And so they project that onto the people they come in contact with. The Spaniards did it. The Anglo-Saxons did it. Obviously in Germany, the Nazis did it. And these are the people who were suffering, who were on the front edge of the Roman conquering empire. The guys on the outside didn't get it as much. But, so to me, there's just no mystery why this all erupted out of Germany, Anglo-Saxons, because we haven't acknowledged it. And if it weren't for the Scandinavians, if it was specifically the Icelanders, if it weren't for the Icelanders who had the opportunity to slowly and peacefully convert to Christianity, we wouldn't even know what our ancestral mythology was, because they were the only people that kept it, because they weren't so they were able to hold on to it and so this is our cute little background and still worship the elves and still, worship Jesus and kind of have that half and half. And if it weren't for them, we wouldn't even know. We wouldn't know who we were.
Yeah. I like that you brought up the white supremacy and how they're kind of coming. They see themselves as slaves and victims because if you go within the philosophy of like the Ku Klux Klan and the Aryan Brotherhood and things like that, those groups very much specifically, they very much see themselves as like they're like within the Klan they see themselves as fighting what they call Zog, which is like the Zionist, they're really coming from this place of, we think, the Jews and everybody, they're all trying to wipe out their white race. They're all trying to kill it. It's still this feeling of, we're being attacked. So now we have to try to overcompensate by dominating. But yeah, I love that you brought up that feeling or that feeling of why that's there is because of the violation that did happen as Christianity started to influx into, our culture. And yeah, it's just, I really think the way for us, especially as European people, to go about healing that disconnect and all of that is to use that, tap into that fire element that we're talking about and use that to purify and to burn away all the Christian programming. Like, to me, it's just going through and like applying critical thinking, even like, and using that, like with Jesus. One thing I like to think about is, the irony of like why anyone thinks Jesus could ever save them. Like, and he wasn't even good at his job. Like, I mean, he was a carpenter that ended up nailed to some boards. So, let's talk about irony. Like, the guy's not even good at his job. So why, that guy's not going to save you. You're better off learning from an archetype like Odin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really good talk.
Thanks, guys, for letting me come on and,
of course,
ranting and raving. And thanks for now my new understanding of Kalsarp yoga. And I'm really looking forward now to seeing more of what you guys do. And I'm happy, go back and forth and maybe we can have, more, bring you onto my channel and vice versa. I'd love to see that.
We would love that.
That'd be great. Maybe we try like a live broadcast or something like that, get more engagement.
Yeah, because I'm not done with this conversation.
Yeah. I know, right?
No, it's good.
We can put a bookmark in it for now, but yeah.
Right.
Just keep it up. Yeah.
To be continued for sure. But we sure appreciate you coming on and joining us on our channel, Michael. It's been a very interesting and enlightening conversation. Of course, we'll have you back at some time, but why don't you tell the viewers what you're up to and where they can find you?
So you can find me at thunderwizard.com. That is my subscription site where you can go if you want to become an apprentice, work with me personally. You can also go to the free YouTube channel, thunderwizard.com, thunderwizard, DOTCOM. And, there's options there as well. And you start there. And if anything hits your fancy, you'll have options to connect with me more.
Yep. And we'll put the links to Michael's channel below. And for those of you who have not read the book or would like to read the book, Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward. Very, very affordable, very good book. As well as all your other books, Michael, I think, some of your best work is in your books. Even they're all wonderful, but this is one that if you're a fan of the channel, read this book because, if you're resonating with us, this is something that you'll get a lot out of. Again, Michael, being one of my gurus, thank you very much for joining us. This is a wonderful conversation. I've learned so much from you and everybody else. Thank you for joining us. If you have not yet, be sure to go to thewizardfactory.com and check out our free initiation package. We have in there a toolbox video series that teaches you how to cast the Circle of the Magi, work with the runes, as well as some other meditative practices. And it also gives you free access to our Facebook Inner Sanctum group, where if you're wanting more personal interaction with us to ask us questions, things like that, that group is where that kind of more close-knit tribe interaction goes on. Let us know what you thought of the episode, your opinions and anything that we brought up that really resonated with you. Let us know what that is in the comment, and what your thoughts are on things. And until next week, be empowered, be inspired, and be encouraged.